in Australia we have legislation which is binding, which permits the exclusion of males from women's sport. So we can offer single-sex, female-only sport, and we can do it legally.
Does as she does best. Dances through players. That is a positive touch from Michelle Heyman. Has Simpson to her right. Thinks about the shot. Thinks about it again.
Up and up to Heyman. It's the goal the Matildas deserve. It's fabulous football.
What would you do if you took your daughter to a game and suddenly there was two taller, faster, stronger guys pretending that they were women?
I wouldn't let a player take her off.
Well, welcome to you wherever you're listening from. This is Filtered, episode 13. My name is Phil Dye, and today we'll be looking at a pretty sticky issue. This is an issue really that parents with daughters will confront, sports coaches, teachers, and anyone who's interested in sport and fair play. In the 2024 Olympics, boxer Imane Khalif won the women's 66 kilogram boxing gold medal. Now, most viewers, me included, thought there was something unusual about Miss Khalif, something not quite right. Now, most listeners will know what followed. The Milksop Olympics Committee danced around the topic of transgender and intersex athletes in the name of inclusion and diversity. It turned out that Imane Khalif was actually a man. Now, while probably born intersex, which is a chromosomal abnormality in about 1 in 5,000 births, 1 in 5,000 babies, gamete testing after the Games revealed he was most certainly male. He wasn't transgender, but he and his team were, well, sort of purposely ignorant about his biological sex. Now, this has opened a can of worms in women's and girls' sport around Australia. And you might be thinking, well, why here? You know, we're small fry. Well, because leading sports associations in Australia remain either blissfully ignorant of the science or so besotted with identity inclusion politics that they can't hear the roar of disapproval from parents, women, girls, and coaches. And sports fans everywhere. Now, you may have a daughter playing sport and think that this won't affect you. I can assure you, if your daughter continues playing, sometime, somewhere, she will confront this. You will confront this. I decided to get to the bottom of this mucky issue by speaking to someone who should know. Nerissa Scott is the spokeswoman for Save Women's Sport Australasia, covers New Zealand as well, an organisation aiming to save women's sport from the inclusion delusion. Welcome, Nerissa.
Hi, Phil. How are you?
Pretty well, thank you. Can you tell us what Save Women's Sport Australia is all about?
Yeah, absolutely. So Save Women's Sport Australasia, we're a founding member of the International Consortium on Female Sport, which is an international coalition of women's organisations, athletes and supporters of women in sport who assert that male athletes should not compete in female sports. We understand that everyone has the right to play sport, but no one has the right to play in any category they choose. So sport is meaningless without fair competition, which is fairly obvious, and that's why we have separate categories for disabled people, for children, for men and for women.
So why is your organisation even necessary in the first place?
But what we've seen is a push for inclusion, and that's having unintended negative consequences for women and girls, and they're losing fair and meaningful competition at all levels of female sport. So therefore it's our mission to preserve biology-based eligibility standards for participation in female sport. That's our mission.
And was there a time then that this first became noticeable, that you thought, wow, we have to act on this?
Well, we started to see this happening around 2017-18. So in NZ, there is a male named Lexi Matheson taking a women's spot in the 2017 Karate Championships. Also, 43-year-old Gavin, now Laurel Hubbard, won gold medals in the women's weightlifting in 2017 and then went on to compete on the world stage in women's weightlifting at the Tokyo Olympics. And that was actually a really good example too of the media capture, Phil. So the Olympic Games journalists all had to follow the press guidelines around transgender athletes. So it was mass delusion and psychosis on the television. I don't know if you remember watching it. It was wild. Yeah. And all of the newspapers and the news outlets were describing the first appearance by an openly transgender woman at the Olympics. Laurel Hubbard has made history by becoming the first transgender athlete to compete at the Olympic Games. Like, it was all the same lines. And also around 2018 in Canada, there was a prominent trans activist he's gone by various names, so Ivy McKinnon, Veronica Ivy, and that individual was winning women's cycling events and then became the first transgender world track cycling champion. And lots of us was watching this and just thinking, this is so utterly unfair.
Well, I think most Australians were watching the boxing back at the Paris Olympics and found that was incredibly unfair.
Well, that was 2024, right?
Yes, it was, just last year. I think a lot of Australians watching didn't actually realise that this boxer was a biological male. Now, one of the big discussion points is about intersex athletes. What's Save Women's Sports got to say about that?
Yeah, well, obviously this is part of the issue as well, but it's separate to the issue of transgender, because intersex or DSD, so differences of sexual development, that's not an identity. So you can't, you're just born that way. You can't identify as someone with a DSD. It's a really a rare condition, affects only 1 in 5,000 babies, so it's a really small number. Although the DSDs are all sex specific. And so we've seen Caster Semenya, so a male who fathered children, obliterate the female competition when he was permitted to compete in the women's category. We've also seen at the Rio Games in 2016, all that way back in 2016, all the winners on the women's 800-metre podium were males, including Caster Semenya. Aside from it being completely unfair with the fact that there's testosterone, World Athletics introduced new eligibility rules in 2019. So athletes with DSDs needed to abide by those if they wanted to compete in women's track events between the 400 metres and the 1.6 kilometres. And then in March this year, after what we saw in Paris with Iman Khalif and co., we saw the head of World Athletics announce the introduction of cheek swabs and dry blood spot tests for female athletes in order to maintain the integrity of competition.
So are you hoping that these cheek swabs will be introduced into all Australian women's and girls' sport to finally put this whole thing at rest?
So we're hoping that Kirsty Coventry, the new head of the IOC, will follow World Athletics' lead. She has expressed a desire to protect the female category because there is the androgen insensitivity test that you can have. So it's a one-off cheek swab test initially, and then if there's any further investigation required, if there's a presence of a DSD, then they can do further investigation to ensure fairness.
Now, just going back, looking at that test, this is a test that determines how much testosterone an individual generates within their body, because testosterone will increase speed and strength.
Yes.
So this test will prove that. Now, if that boxer, Iman Khalif, would have had that, it would have proved that he was most certainly a male and benefited from all the extra testosterone giving him strength.
Yeah.
So I guess that is a test that any transgender athlete could actually bring to the table and say, look, I'm quite prepared to have this test.
Yes, exactly.
What is stopping every sport in Australia, from the AFL down to netball, administering these simple DNA tests to begin with, not an androgen test, but a simple DNA test? What's stopping them doing that?
Well, there's, unfortunately, within those governing sporting bodies and the peak sporting body in Australia, the Australian Sport Commission, there's no appetite to do that. So you've got Kieran Perkins, who's the head of the Australian Sport Commission, and all he's concerned about is trans women being accepted as women, and for inclusion to be prioritised above fairness and safety. They want to have. They say they want inclusion and fairness, but you actually can't have both.
No, you can't.
The reason we have sports categories is to maximise inclusion, in fact.
Yes.
And sports categories are exclusive by design.
Yep, they must be. They have to be.
Yeah.
And there's lots of categories in society that are exclusive. Like, we've got to exclude people with a criminal record from working with children. We've got to exclude people with a transmissible disease from going into a nursing home. We exclude people under 18 from buying alcohol. It's all for the safety of those concerned. Now, this means Perkins is not taking any of public sentiment into account, is he? He's not understanding what women are actually saying about this.
No, and I mean, he's not the only one. You've got prominent male journalists, Peter Fitzsimmons comes to mind, who are just going on this narrative and this rhetoric, which is all about being kind and being inclusive, and we want an inclusive society and yada, yada, yada. However, they're ignoring the very real situation for females in that inclusion results in disadvantage for us. If we have male inclusion in women's category, it's disadvantage for females, and it results in females missing out on spots, selection, scholarships, podium finishes, money winnings.
And physical health, as they use sport as a means of activity.
Exactly. We spend millions of dollars on female, promoting female sport and participation because we understand the benefits to all athletes of sport, and then we've put this big obstacle in the way.
Is it because the likes of Kieran Perkins and Fitzsimons simply don't understand the science, or is it because they've been got at by activists within their organisation?
I think, unfortunately, there is just... The trans lobby is so powerful and has so much money behind it. A lot of it government money, Yeah. You've got ACON pushing this agenda in Australian society, and obviously that's Australia's answer to Stonewall in the UK. So that they are pushing gender ideology onto society. And then you've got Pride in Sport, which is an arm of ACON, which is in every state in Australia, and it's going to sporting organisations and pushing the inclusion guidelines. So back in 2018, we had the Australian Sports Commission, in conjunction with Pride in Sport, develop their trans and gender diverse guidelines, and they are only guidelines. They have no legal standing, but in those guidelines, the main things that are prioritised are inclusion above fairness. So gender identity is prioritised above biology and sex. And this is despite Australia having both state and federal anti-discrimination legislation which permits single-sex sport, so exclusion of males from women's sport if strength, stamina or physique are relevant, which is all sport. So these guidelines have been pushed into sports organisations, and we had 8 peak sporting bodies come out back in 2018-19 to say they would also align with those policies. Now hold on. Is it a guideline or a policy? Because there's a difference between the two, isn't there? They're guidelines from the Australian Sports Commission.
Right.
And using those guidelines, the sporting organisations, so the AFL, Hockey Australia, Cricket Australia, Netball Australia, then went on to develop their own policies for inclusion.
Yes. So for sporting organisations out there, these are simply guidelines, and you're quite right. ACON has been instrumental in placing people into the right organisations in order to push the boundary. And of course, we've got the ABC, who is really an arm of ACON due to their membership of the Diversity in Employment branch of ACON. So people aren't getting a clear a clear view of this.
Yeah.
Now, Nerissa, what's the Australian government position on this?
Well, as I mentioned, the Australian Sports Commission, which is part of the Australian government, they introduced the inclusion guidelines in 2018. That body, the Australian Sports Commission, is overseen by the Federal Sport Minister, Annika Wells. So we can only assume that that's the government position, that they want to prioritise gender identity above sex and prioritise inclusion above fairness.
Yes, Nerissa, it's pretty clear that the Australian Labor government are prioritising inclusion over safety and fairness. I interviewed Alison Burns, who's a representative for the Labor Party. This is what she had to say.
Hello, Alison. What is a woman?
What do you mean? In what sense?
Can a man be a woman?
I think so, yeah. I think it's whatever they want to be.
So whatever a man wants to be, he can be.
I think so, yeah.
So that's what Alison Burns, who's the Labor member for Cunningham, thinks. That's what the Labor Party under Albanese thinks. And the Greens also agree with this stance. You wonder where it's all leading.
Exactly. Well, you can't go and compete in the under-12s.
That's right. Next, they're going to try and make age irrelevant. In this case, inclusion has gone way too far, and I'm sick of it, and I think most Australians are sick of it. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about girls' sport, particularly the under-16s, under-17s girls' sport. And girls' sport has taken a massive flourish over the last maybe 10 years due to moments like this.
Every single player inside the Nigeria penalty area and not it in. Alana Kennedy.
And probably to a lesser extent, this.
A double hundred in Test match cricket, and now a century in ODI as well. It's her second in the green and gold of Australia. Is the end of a magnificent innings for Annabelle Sutherland and for Australia as well. And Australia will finish on 6 for 298 after their 50 overs.
OK, Nerissa, Australian women are doing so well in some of the big sports, in football, in swimming, in cricket. But these women are doing well because they started out early. They started out as girls. And I know from my experience with my daughter, you've got to take the kids to sport. You've got to spend time with them. And it's the parents that do a lot of the damn hard work. What are parents saying to you about transgender players in their daughters' sports?
So we hear from parents all the time at Save Women's Sport, and a lot of them are just can't believe what's happening, and they find themselves very quickly disappointed when they don't get any response from the sports organisations if they do make a complaint. So I've spoken to parents who have made formal complaints and they get no response. And other parents, you know, they get a massive shock when they realise there's a male playing in their girls', you know, soccer competition or netball competition or whatever it is. And the girls who are playing have never consented to playing in a mixed category. They were signing up for a female competition, and then they're meeting up with male bodies on the field, which is really dangerous. You know, we all know that males on average are bigger, stronger. You know, they've got thicker skulls, they've got longer wingspan, arm span, larger lungs, larger heart. It's actually really dangerous to have males in a women's team, and especially dangerous when you consider, like I mentioned, there's no consent. So I can't, it makes me extremely angry as a mother to a young daughter. But yeah, parents and female athletes are finding that it out when it happens, or they hear it happening to someone they know. And then when they do try to make complaints and say this isn't okay, they're coming up against brick walls.
I interviewed parents at a local girls' football day. There were several games being played at the same time. And I was stunned at how little parents knew about this issue. There was a lot of the word nice being used, that we have to be nice. I got abused by one couple. Most parents were on side, and probably not surprisingly, the men were far more on top of this than the women were. Here's some answers that I got to my question about, would you like your daughter playing against transgender players?
Definitely not. Definitely not.
Yeah. Do you think there's a space for men playing in girls' sports?
No.
No, I would not. Definitely not. They're taller and they're faster and they're stronger. It's just how the way of the world is.
We can object to it.
I would be happy to object to it. I wouldn't be okay with it. Mate, like, when they're really, really young, maybe. The world's turning that way now, but I just think, no, I wouldn't be okay with it. I really wouldn't.
Do you have anything to add to that?
Oh, keep the... If they're males, keep them with the males teams. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Would you like your daughter playing in a team against males who identify as women?
No, definitely not.
Not in a million years.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
But then there's comments like this.
That's it, go.
Yep, wouldn't bother me.
Not even if they're bigger, stronger, faster, and the girls can feel unsafe and actually stop playing because of it?
Well, I think if they felt unsafe, then that would be a different issue. But if they were just genuine kids the same age having a go, I don't have a problem with it.
So there's no difference between male and female?
Yeah, Tully.
There probably is, but I don't have a problem with it.
Okay, all right. Yeah. Would you like your daughter playing against that team?
Yes, that's fine.
Even though there's
that's fine.
Damage?
Yes, that's fine.
Yeah, no problem.
Do you have a reason why it's no problem?
Yeah, no, we're all about inclusion, and kids' mental health is more important than the soccer game.
And it's more important than safety, broken bones?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Would you like your daughter or granddaughter playing against that team?
I wouldn't mind, no. I don't mind if she plays against that team.
Even though they might get hurt and never ever win?
Well, I think that's a sign of the times, isn't it?
A sign of the times, isn't it? I find that such a sad comment. As if we're all victims and we can't do anything about it, so we just got to suck it up. But Nerissa, we can do something about it, and something has recently happened where parents objected. Can you tell us about that?
As we saw recently, there was the good news story out of Victoria where parents and athletes, netballers, complained because there was 2 males competing in a women's league in Victoria. And Netball Victoria did an internal review and investigation, and despite Netball Victoria having these inclusion policies which allow males to identify into the women's category, Netball Victoria still, thankfully, made the right decision based on strength, stamina and physique as per the state legislation, and they banned those 2 males from playing for the rest of the season. So common sense prevailed, and also the legislation held. But the only reason that happened is because people made noise. People complained, people went to the media, people went to the journalists. There was footage that also got recorded and people released that. So if that happens, then that puts pressure on the sports bodies. They get pressure because people don't agree with this. People don't want men in the women's category. They want fairness for females.
They do. And of course, if the ABC would have covered that, if they would have shown that poor girl knocked over on the netball court, most Australians would be more informed on the issue, but they're simply not. Well,
exactly. And as you know, Phil, the ABC has signed up to the ACON's Australian Workplace Employment Index. So they get gold stars and special accolades when they report favourably around this issue.
Yes, indeed. And in the next episode, episode 14, we'll be looking at that, how media bias has completely influenced public opinion on this. And the ABC, with some brand new research, has been found to be complicit in trying to sway public opinion. ABC news journalists and perhaps even the ABC board.
In some Australian sports,
Their guidelines state that males who identify as female can play in women's and girls' games. However, they are just guidelines. To protect the safety of women and girls, many sports are now banning transgender players. This is not unlawful. Some sports though, like football, AFL and cricket, put inclusion ahead of safety. Even inclusion has its limits, and single-sex sport exists for two very good reasons: safety and fairness. The Declaration of Biological Truth Australia supports having a separate division for transgender players. However, the main divisions, including community, must remain single-sex. Help the cause by signing the declaration today. It's free, fast, and you can sign privately so your name isn't public. Just search for Declaration of Biological Truth Australia. Thanks for listening.
Seamson has Carpenter in front. A really intelligent ball inside to find Carpenter, and an even better finish. And it is from none other than Michelle Heyman.
Would you like your daughter playing against a team of transgender men?
It does take away from it being a girls' sport, definitely, but is that the way society's heading? Where we have to accept it?
We don't have to accept it.
That's right, yeah.
We don't have to accept anything.
Yeah. Well, technically then it's a mixed sport in my opinion, so no, I wouldn't like it.
And I'm talking with Nerissa Scott. Nerissa is the spokesperson for Save Women's Sports Australia. Nerissa, who are the worst offenders in Australia for putting this idea of being nice and inclusion ahead of women and girls' safety and sports fairness?
In Australia, we've seen lots of the sporting bodies, like I mentioned, align with the Australian Sports Commission guidelines. So the AFL, cricket, hockey, basketball, netball, football have been some of the worst offenders. But then in the ones that have seen the light, so to speak, we've had leadership internationally from organisations such as World Rugby, World Athletics, World Triathlon, World Netball. They are really leading the way in protecting the female category. However, this hasn't always translated to the Australian context, and it doesn't always cover all of the different levels of sport.
Now, this is an interesting point. The levels between elite sports and community sports. Elite sports are protected, aren't they? Trans individuals can't go into elite sport, but they can in community sports. So it's, the under 17-year-old girls who suddenly finds a male player in the opposition. What do you think of that?
Well, it makes no sense to me, though, Phil, and I'm sure you agree. If elite female athletes deserve fair and safe competition, amateur athletes do as well.
More so, I would argue more so.
Yeah, more so, yeah, correct. So sport is meaningless without a level playing field. And we said before, males are on average stronger, bigger than females. And if girls are forced to compete against males at a community sport level, that will result in females feeling discouraged, defeated, and ultimately they'll be excluding from their sport. So elite athletes don't just magically appear. They develop from community and amateur sports to become champions and to become elite sports people. If we take away the community element, because there's males going in there and making it unfair and unsafe for girls, then we deprive girls and women from achieving their full sporting potential.
And also the elite athlete has the benefit of television coverage. So when that woman gets knocked over in an elite category by a trans player, the world can see it. And the audience says, oh, this is no good, this is terrible. But of course, they don't see it in the community category. So they think it doesn't exist.
Yeah, that's right. That's a good point.
It's really wrong. I went to, my group, I belong to the Declaration of Biological Truth, went to the Australian women's cricket game against England at North Sydney Oval, giving out brochures about this and saying that the elite level was protected and we had to protect the girls at community level. And not all the time, but half of the time we were abused. People simply didn't understand what was going on because they don't see it at elite level, so they think it doesn't exist. Yeah,
they think you're just being a bigot, hateful, and I think also there's a misconception around what a transgender person is. people don't understand that it's just an umbrella term that can mean really anything you like. And any man can simply say one day when he wakes up, I'm a woman today, and have all the advantage of male puberty and testosterone. And even if he does decide to use estrogen, hormone suppressant does not mitigate male advantage when it comes to sport. So there goes that man and decides to play a women's sport competition. The whole mantra, trans women are women, has been so powerful to totally brainwash a generation.
Yes, indeed, a generation that's been brainwashed into not accepting reality.
Yes.
Now, what could a parent or a coach do if they turn up at the soccer game, watching their 14-year-old girl, 15-year-old girl playing soccer, and they see that there is a male in the opposition team? What could a coach or parent do?
Yeah, so I've got a 4-year-old daughter, so I'm not personally facing this yet, but I know lots of parents are already going through this with their kids. So you've got boys identifying into the girls' soccer competition or cross-country racing. We know it's not fair. And I would say to those parents, you need to find your voice and you need to be brave, because if we all stay silent, this continues. And I'm not saying we should be targeting or singling out individuals, because it's not their fault. It's the environment and the climate and the current trends have enabled this to happen, allowed this to happen, but we need to find a way to voice our opposition. So I would suggest grouping together with other concerned parents or coaches. You could refuse to field a side if there's a male in a women's competition, which we've seen happening in Australia.
So hold on, so the parent sees it, they talk to the coach, and then the coach says to the girls, I'm sorry girls, we are going to be walking off and not playing today.
That's one option. That's one option. Absolutely, that's one option. And I would be very happy to see the coaches support the girls, which we are seeing more and more of. But that wasn't always the case. And I know that there's been other instances where the girls speak to their coach and they're told to shut up, sit down, don't say anything, don't talk about it. I know Deborah Lovely-Ackerson, who is involved with us here at Save Women's Sports, she was one of the female weightlifters who had to compete against Gavin or Laurel Hubbard in weightlifting in the championships, and she didn't think it was fair, but she was told by her coaches to be quiet, and they were instructed not to speak to the media.
Oh yes, parents, mums and dads, you've got to be brave. You've got to stand up for your daughters and go to the media. Go to the media if you are upset about it.
They've got to be brave, yeah. Speak up, make a stand. It might be a sacrifice initially, but I think it's a short-term pain, long-term gain sort of thing. Girls and women in Australia do have a right to fair sport competition against other females, and we have to just stand up and defend that right. You could also speak to a journalist, and again, I understand the reasons why people don't want to do that, but that's what we really need to see happening more and more. We can't have, just the anonymous feedback. We need actual people standing up and saying enough is enough.
And we need men too, don't we? Men to stand up for their partners and daughters.
100%. Men, dads, mums.
So if you're listening and your daughter or friends are involved in this, it's not just the women's job to speak up. It is the man's job to speak up as well. And because it's your daughter, Dad, that's being faced with this stuff.
100%.
Would an open division save this problem? An open division where a trans-identified player would simply have to play in the open division?
Well, I think the men's category should be renamed open anyway, and I feel like it might have originally been that way, but I can't be certain. But all males, no matter how they choose to present or identify, can play in the open category. Just make sure we leave the protected female category for females only, as was the original intention, and male exclusion is necessary for that to happen.
And Narissa, it's women who have experienced the biggest impact from this. Men haven't experienced it yet, but gee, they will, won't they?
So you mean as in trans-identified females playing in the men's category?
Correct. And I know the uptake of testosterone creates that massive difference with strength and speed and stamina for most sports for men. Yes, there is a massive advantage. But there are some advantages for women in ultra-distance events, ultra-distance swimming, ultra-distance running, especially in cold climates, and also in sports like pistol shooting. Now, we haven't seen transgender men going into that, but we probably will soon.
Yeah, we'll definitely see more and more of that. That's included in the new sporting policies that we're seeing being developed, that females that identify as trans will compete in the male category. And that's because we have no problem with that, because they don't have any male athletic advantage because they didn't go through male puberty. The issue we do have with it is the safety issue. There is an issue with female bodies playing men's contact sport, which is a no-brainer. But we're seeing that happening now. I don't know if you remember Ellia Green. She competed in Rio Olympics for Australia in the rugby union, and she's an absolute gun. I remember watching her. She's amazing. But since the Olympics, she's 32 years old now, and now identifies as a man, is playing rugby union in Sydney, not at the same elite level, but is playing in a men's rugby union competition in Sydney, which to me is just diabolical and just negligent and so dangerous. Just the skull thickness of a female, there's much higher level of risk of serious concussion. It
worries me that if a trans-identified player has been through the puberty blocker and hormone regime, we know that puberty blockers affect the brain and thinking can become distorted. That's a worry.
Yeah, cognitive issues, yep.
But then that testosterone that woman may be taking in order to, be what she believes is a man, she could adjust that testosterone and therefore have greater testosterone than the blokes.
Possibly, yeah. What's the difference between that and doping?
That's right. There is no difference.
We have doping, doping regulations, but how is a female taking testosterone any different to doping?
That's right. Now, Nerissa, where can parents and coaches contact you in order to get more information and some guidance?
Yeah, sure. So you can go to our website, so savewomensport.com. You can also follow us on Facebook or on X, and you can send us a DM. We're very responsive, and we love to hear from people and help out in any way we can.
Okay, well, all your details will be on the episode notes as well. Nerissa, it's been great talking to you. Thanks so much.
You too, Phil. Great job.
Nerissa Scott from Save Women's Sports Australia. All her contact details, as I said, will be on the episode notes.
Yeah, I agree. I think, the biological makeup is different. So it does, they're obviously a lot stronger. So I feel like that it's not fair. So I probably would be against it. Yeah.
Guess I probably wouldn't like it. I wouldn't be happy with them playing against my daughter.
Now, just a bit of a heads up for parents or coaches who are going to be talking about this, discussing it, and maybe making decisions about it. Always make sure that your discussions revolve around the safety and the fairness issue, not on the identity of the person involved. You're not discriminating against that person because of their belief or who they believe they are or about how they look. It's on safety issues, because it's not against the law to discriminate on issues of safety when strength, stamina and speed come into the equation. Well, that's it for episode 13 of Filtered. Thanks for listening. Our next episode will be on the media and looking at media that you can trust. Or can you? Who can you trust? My name is Phil Dye. If you wish to contact me, you can email me at phil@filtered.com.au. I'm going to leave you with one of the great exciting moments in women's sport over the last 12 months. See you next time.
Record alert, I reckon, because Molly's going to lead off for the Aussies.
So first time we're seeing Molly O'Callaghan here on pool deck. First time we're seeing Shayna Jack out here on pool deck.
So they've watched the girls swim this morning, and the heat swim was exceptional by all 4 members of our women's relay this morning. Meg's got to hold her nerve here. She's got to make sure that she swims her own race, doesn't get caught up in the moment. As we keep saying, a seasoned campaigner. This is her second Olympic 4x1 freestyle relay.
But the Aussies have broken the back of the rest of the field. Meg Harris, the 22-year-old, surging away. They did it in London, they did it in Rio, they did it in Tokyo, they've done it in Paris. It's 4 in a row.
And it's an Olympic record for Australia.
They are our untouchables.